Alright, so you remember in the last video, the last window, whatever, we had these guys, right? We did two groups for different 10-mans. I got rambling about 25s and decided to just save it for another video. Well, lucky for you, I'm in the mood to make that other video now. Um, one of the first things we should talk about, right, is the fact that there's this thing called the bench, and people get a lot of feelings about it, but in order for a 25-man raid to sustain over the course of whatever the life of the server is going to be, even if it's all your best friends, you're always going to have situations come up, emergencies, people are going to go to weddings, have parties, their dog is going to pass away, it's going to be sad, right? So just always prepare ahead of time and have expectations that, like, sometimes the raid team might have to be a little bit bigger than the 25 people in it in order to just have life. Sometimes life gets in the way of people when we're playing a game, it's got a way of getting away from people sometimes. And it's also okay, when you're playing playing a raid game like this where there's a lot of hours online with people, and tempers can flare, and like sometimes it gets a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe if you're like a low social battery kind of person, it kind of wears you thin a little bit raiding as much as you might have to do. But honestly, if you keep it small enough, there shouldn't really be too many problems. Now, if you want to talk about the 25, clearly we're going to have something that looks a little bit like these two groups anyway, right? Because we want to eventually fill up the raid with a great spread of things. But for the purpose of just my own experience, I'm going to tell you this off rip, guys. Healers are the first things that usually bail on you. So for every single freaking thing, somebody play an alt, have somebody have a friend, their mother, whoever, make sure that you've got your healers for your raid covered. I can't stress that enough. You want to make sure you have a healthy deep bench. And while you're at it, you might as well have some bonus tanks. Just whatever you can get people to hybrid up, and there you go. So that's like a healthy bench to start with, whether that be alts, whether that be other people for them so far. Don't worry about that yet. We'll get to that. Now again, for a 25 man, we all know with Lich King. Do we all know this? Some of you might not know this yet. That's why I'm kind of doing it, right? So let me explain this the best way that I can. You don't want to step on people's toes in the raid off rip, and you don't want to bring like 5 of the same thing to the raid, because it's not gonna feel good on people to lose week after week after week after week, and then see other classes that don't have as much direct competition just flourishing. And just from one raid lead to another, I know that, like, if you guys want to do this, maybe you've had loot issues in the past, or maybe that's what motivated you to want to make your own guild to try to get rid of those, or however you're going to do it. Just make sure that you're fair, you're transparent, you're open. I find that works a lot better than just saying any particular system works better than another. Because here's the thing, right? Like with our casual guild, with our dad guild, we just do main spec, off spec, and we have a +1 limiter that we put on it, so we spread out the shit in the raid, right? So that people aren't getting 20 upgrades before somebody else and just leave after 2 weeks with all the loot. Go join some mega guild because they're bored, Like, that's not what we're trying to do. You always want to keep a healthy vibe within your tribe and try to, any competition should be friendly, to be honest with you. Like, I know that some people are motivated by the spirit of, having a little competition, but as toxic as that crap can become, like, you're better off taking it a little bit easier. And that's why we have a dad guild, because like people have lives and jobs, and it's 2024 now. We're not in school and doing this instead of our homework, right? Let's be real. So without further ado, let me drink this drink, and I'm going to start building this 25 in front of you. We've already got those heals and tanks set up on the bench to staff us for a little bit, and I'm going to give you the bench first before I make any of this group and tell you why. I don't know if any of you folks out there that are listening enjoy some cherry pomegranate seltzer, but that's what's going through my veins right now. Feels good. Over the course of the life of a server, you're going to have a lot of people come in and out, but one of the things you're always going to need is a friggin' hunter. So put them on that list of people on the bench you're always going to want. And then I know with us, rogue wasn't a bad one to stack and have multiple of either. So there's some more bench people for you. Now, since we have healers and tanks already established there, everything else is just going to be filler, right? And if I have to, I'll use Group 8, but we shouldn't. Now, for these folks, these should be different people than what's already here, because you want to keep filling the raid. So it doesn't really matter with the healers and the tanks as much if somebody can flip off and cover that, but you still want to have other people available, right? So how you do your bench, however many people you fill your guild with or not for 25, if I said bring 35 people, you're already going to be leaving 10 out in the cold and then have to transfer them in. I don't know how many, even if you sit 1 and 1, right? You're gonna have to sit, what is it, 8 people a week? Oh man, that's gonna be a mess. So every 3 weeks, somebody's got to. It's just too bad. It's like, I don't know. Depends what they're playing a little bit too. But you got to be able to sustain that engine, right? You don't want to run out of fuel in a raid group because not being able to do the raid or complete the raid just because you don't have enough people, that roster boss, that'll kill a raid. That'll kill any raid. In terms of the bench, you want to have some extra warlocks, so I'll give you 2 to hang it. You know what? No, we'll say that 1 has a good enough demon off spec, because maybe they're going to get bored on you instead. But having 2 warlocks isn't going to hurt anything, and then I would grab another one of these just for the hell of it, because you're likely to have one leave. There's so many Death Knights that play. And then even later on, when Armor Pen gets stronger, you can have a warrior waiting in the wings or something. I know that flex for all of these different kinds of dungeons that can heal is a godsend. So you kind of give yourself a strong healer there and a different kind of healer there with off-spec options. I would put another Moonkin on that bench just in case. Get over there, you. You might want a mage on your bench. Our guild has so many mages that it'll probably even be reflected in this comp that I build just because it's in the back of my mind fresh. But yeah, when we started Lich King, we had a guild of about 11 people come over, and 5 of them, I think, wanted to be mages. And I was like, all right, well, that's a lot. So then the other ones picked paladins, and now they go back and forth arguing over why the group doesn't fill. But, no, I'm kidding. They're really good guys. I give them shit all the time. Wrath is so popular with certain classes because they made everything feel better, but certain things shine. And Paladin is just one of the ones that got a lot of love. So I can't blame people for liking it, but I can ask them to play something different if they want to come to our raid, because we're full. That looks good on the bench. Let's do what we want to bring to your raid. And let me maybe kind of see why. You got 25 slots we're going to fill, and with most of these raids, you're never going to need more than 3 tanks on any trash or boss situation, I would hope. Or anything that needs to be tanky and or grip something, you're going to have enough of them in your 25 anyway. You should budget for that. This is going to be, again, like, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. I want to just give you guys a group that works. And again, if we're talking about going to phase 1, if you're doing Ulduar, a lot of the time you need 2 priests for mind control. So you're going to see me just tap into that real, like, that's just going to be there. Assume that that's in your 25 already. Whether you want to bench 1 on a different night, if you don't need them both, that's up to you. I'm not going to tell you how to run your guild. But I will tell you what to bring so you have an easier time. The first thing I want to put in my raid group is a warrior, because that's my shield fucking wall tank, and he's just going to take infinite damage and live, hopefully. And then we put a pally in there, and then I'm going to use a bear as my third, and you can probably just leave it as a cat or some other DPS fill as a flex until you need it as that. But yeah, I don't know, like, that's super strong for a 25, is having those 3. And now you're probably saying, why don't you have any Death Knight tanks? They're the blah blah blah. And I tell you, well, it's because one of our guys is a Frosty, and sometimes he switches over if we're light or just for whatever reason. But he's real good at that, and that gives the whole raid the Icy Talons. So then you can stack him a whole Unholy Friend, and he can do massive damage with more haste. So that's going to give us already just... Oh, I think that's counting the bench for all this stuff. Never mind. Hang on. Let me build this up better and try to explain it. This is just going to be for the mind control on Resuvius, right? Because we're doing Nax. We have the tanks, we have these guys. Let's get our healers on the board first, right? I usually took 4. And then we had flexes. So, there's your disc. Did we take 5, actually? I think we took 5. Because I think we had 2 of them for DSAC, right? That makes sense. And then one of you. One of you. That looks right. In my head. That'll do you good. Plus you have 2 Shadow Priests anyway. And if they're doing all of their healing that they're doing naturally, like, you're not going to die. Like, depending on how they scale magic damage on your server or not, maybe. I don't know. I've seen some crazy numbers on places and things, so who knows. Since you don't need any more healers, this is all going to be the damage dealers left. So let me just, let me insert what I think would be quite balanced. Alright. Yeah. Looking okay. Feeling good. Yeah, I mean, we're filling it up pretty good so far. The reason you're taking all these warlocks is because they have an execute phase in Lich King, by the way, so that makes them very powerful. We have a warrior in our group, so I'm just going to put him in there for now. Figure by ICC you'll have it. What's the other thing we use? Oh, yeah. Haha. Ta-da! There's your 25. With an ample bench to fill whatever's missing. Now for the 25-man raid, you can definitely see where later on in the phases and stuff, you've definitely got your shadow still covered for Ulduar, even if you lose one and they switch to something else for whatever reason. If one of your any of these guys, by the way, can be the flex healers for Sapphiron in the 25 if need be. Any of these shadow priests or your shamans and your druids. Yeah, I don't know. This is a pretty strong group. Like, you could possibly take less casters and stack unholies and rogues and stuff in phase 1, but in the same breath, like, casters are really popular and fun in Lich King, and you're probably going to get a lot of them. This has a very good smattering of all the buffs, and the fact that you have 4 pallies in here doesn't, like, overkill it, but it is kind of, you are kind of pushing it, because in this 25, your loot table for the tokens is going to be shared between all the paladins, all the priests, and, oh boy, is it warlock? Yeah. So, I mean, again, that's if everybody wants to share or not, right? If you, you don't have to do this, even. You can take a different group if you want. You could probably just switch it up like that and have less pallies, but then you're putting more people on this and this and this token at the same time. So you just gotta be careful with that too, right? You want to make sure you're not overstacking it and freezing people out of their gear. But at the same breath, like, I mean, I've seen meta comps that look totally different than this. I've seen people try to take like 10 warlocks for the meta sweats and stuff that was going on in classic and whatever. I think honestly, if you take him back out, put you back in there, excuse you, sir, or ma'am, or whatever. I think that's a great 25 team. Now, you can argue with me all day, because, I mean, that's kind of the beauty of the internet. We're going to do it anyway. But tell me how that doesn't, keep enough people interested playing classes you need. Feel free to constructively criticize people. Thanks a lot. See you around.